Welcome back. We're on the 1989 Tour de France, which started in Luxembourg yesterday with a prologue time trial. We've just been watching stage one. Thanks to Malcolm for his studio comments. It was an 85-mile circuit of Luxembourg, and it was won by the Portuguese Acácio da Silva. On to stage two then, which is a team time trial. Remember, 22 teams competing this year in the Tour de France. 9 members of the team go. The team time is taken from the 5th man to finish. Now, that's important. OK, let's rejoin the action then. Our commentators, Paul Sherwin, who is the summariser, and, of course, Phil Liggett.
And this is the first team we see on the road, the Chateau d'Ax team. This is the lineup of the 9 riders. The top sprinter, Gianni Bugno, wearing 171. He's the man they'll be looking out for a stage win from during the flatter stages once we clear the streets of Luxembourg and move across towards France, especially at Francorchamps tomorrow, which might be his sort of finish. Well, I must say the motor racing circuit there may be flat for the motor cars, but it's pretty hilly for the bike riders. You can see the formation here forming 2 diagonal lines, and it looks to me as though Ennio Venotti at the back there is having a little bit of a problem catching the back wheel of the rider in front. Very, very much a team race, and that the team will instruct any riders who are feeling a bit weak to stay out of the way, sit at the back, and let the rest get on with the rhythm. You saw one of the riders there raise his hand and give the rider in second place at the moment a little bit of a shove. It looks a bit windy by the echelons, Paul.
Well, you can see the riders are strung out across the road here, but they seem to be having a little bit of trouble, the Chateau d'Ax team here, because one of the riders there had let the gap go. That's why his teammate pushed him just to make sure they kept the line going. In the red jersey there, you can see Zanatti, who won the hotspot sprint this morning. That gives him the leader's jersey in the hotspot sprint competition.
Well, this is the first team to go this afternoon, which means that they are the last team in the overall race classification of the 22 teams. The riders seeded from the slowest team to the best team. And by the way, you calculate your team standings on the first 4 riders in the race. By adding their times together, that gives you the team positions overall. 50 kilometers an hour on the clock, slightly more, 51. That's 32 miles an hour, this team going along, and this is the second team on the road, the Histor team, and there's Solon Lilholt in the green jersey sitting at the back of this group, and I would imagine his legs are aching quite a lot now in this big special time trial after that long breakaway of almost the whole race distance this morning.
Well, Lilholt there, as you see, Phil, having a little bit of difficulty following the wheel through. He's obviously had a very hard ride this morning. He's wearing the green jersey there for the points, which is he's wearing. In fact, at the moment, the competition is being led by Da Silva, because he's second place in that competition. He's wearing it tonight. But you can see, as the riders are going through there is Lilholt at the back. Very difficult ride for him today, and probably his teammates won't be too worried about him missing the turns.
Well, he's sitting on, collecting the tickets at the back and letting the boys make the pace. But this looks a far more drilled line-up than the previous Chateau d'Ax team that we saw. They're 3 minutes apart on the road when they leave the start house. And there's a quick rundown of their team. Etienne de Wilde, 162. He's the team sprinter. Luc Russen is the opted team leader here. A reasonably strong team that does these days figure very highly in the one-day classics. But I wouldn't think that in their lineup they have a potential Tour de France overall winner. But then with a prize list of £800,000. Riding, Paul, the technical advance in all the machinery now, these streamlined low-profile bicycles. We call them the funny bikes, but you can tell us a bit more about them.
Yeah, well, it varies from team to team where the size of the front wheel that they use. Some teams use a 24-inch and some a 26. The team here uses a 26-inch front wheel with a disc at the back. That's a carbon fibre disc, which is to cut down the wind resistance at the rear end of the frame. But it's very noticeable in some of the teams that are starting today that certain riders, because of the terrain today, some of them aren't actually using these low-profile bicycles because some of the descents are quite tricky, and it's really a personal choice as to whether the rider uses a low-profile bicycle or not when the circuit's tricky.
The team of Stephen Roach, there he is, at 151. Still, despite all of his problems, the recognised solid leader of the Fagor team. And Stephen Roach now riding this Tour de France to see exactly what is in it for him. Situation at the moment at 24 kilometres. 5 teams have passed through there, including the Capi de Colombia team. The best time set by the Histor team of 28 minutes and 41 seconds. That's Soren Lilhold's team, and he's going to push hard here to try and take the yellow jersey off Acacio da Silva. And the second best time was done by Stephen Roche's Fagor team. They've gone through at 24 kilometers, just 16 seconds slower. The Capi de Colombia team here, well, they are the slowest of the 5 teams timed through so far, 27 seconds down. Now we're down to the finish here, and it's the arrival of Chateau d'Ax, the first team to leave this morning. And you see they've got 6 men they're bringing back here to the finish. The time will be taken on the 5th rider. So they shed 3 of the riders. They will be given separate times, and their race will be against elimination from the Tour de France now. But they come in with a time of 56.26, and naturally enough, the clock there gives them first place, and well it might. We've gone back here now to the TVM squad further down the road. Phil Anderson's team, their first Tour de France. They were the unlucky reserve squad last year. They didn't make the split, and this year they're in and looking forward to it. Anderson then delighted to be back. You see his number there, 211. Jesper Skibby will be a useful ally down there. The Scandinavian rider, 218. Jack Hanegraaff, former Dutch champion, 213. And the man at the back, Peter Peters. The first man to start in the prologue yesterday, and until last Sunday was the Dutch champion. And we picked up the Kelmer team. Here they are. Smallest man in cycling used to be a member of this team, Vincenti Belda, but he's not in the team this year. Fabio Parra is here. He's the team leader, and he is the rider this team will hope will win the Tour de France for them when we go down into the mountains. And there's a bit of pushing and shoving going on there between teammates, and I guess one of them wants to get back in the line, and he helps his mate get in there as well. It was Parra that was doing the pushing off with his arm, because look at the front of the bunch here. Somebody's opened a gap, and here's an example of how an undisciplined team can actually lose you a good time in the Tour de France. And meanwhile, we're back at the finish here for the arrival now of the new Patanina team. But they're going to be outside of the Histor team, well outside in fact. And so Soren Lilholt rests supreme at the moment. And the big roar of applause is for the System U team going down on the left of our picture. They just made their start. And in that team, of course, is Laurent Fignon. Here's the Fagor team. It's Stephen Roche coming in. The clock already outside the Histor time. But Roche won't be too concerned with it, I think. He knows that this wasn't going to be the day for the Fagor team. When he rode in the Tour de France to win this race a couple of years ago, he was, in fact, winning this team time trial. Second place, though, for the time being, at least. There's the view then of the overall leader of the Tour de France. A little tap for the rider in front, Acacio da Silva, now leading the Tour. And I think if all goes according to plan and they don't concede 4 minutes to the fast teams like the Super U's, the System U team still to finish, Acacio da Silva could be just doing enough today to lead this race out of Luxemburg tomorrow. They've nominated Urs Zimmermann, finished 3rd in the Tour de France 4 years ago as their leader. Guido Bontempi, a prolific stage winner, and for my money was the fastest stage finisher in the world. But this year he's been very, very ill, and he's come back into the race, and in fact was left behind, and he finished in the tail group this morning over 5 minutes back. So it does look as though Guido Bontempi may not be seen too often in the big bunch sprints today, this year rather. Interesting to watch here if the yellow jersey is doing any work.
He's just having a little bit of a rest there as he lets Bontempi go through and do his turn. Obviously, he's got a very strong team around him, Da Silva here, and he's just letting the team do as much as they can and probably resting a little bit, because it must have been very hard for those 3 riders out this morning, because it was a long stage for them, a lot harder than it was for the majority of the riders in the bunch, as he sits just here behind Perini, who's worked here also.
Yeah. And this looks like the Reynolds team of Pedro Delgado. There he is. This is a rider whose Tour de France is starting from the very basic position this year. Last 198th, and he's got to work his way up to the leaderboard now. It's an awful lot to ask. But he started this morning because he's no longer on the last position. A lot of riders this morning lost quite a few minutes. So Delgado is already on the way back, and his Reynolds team is challenging quite well today. And so he could well be back into at least the top half of the field by tonight. TVM team coming in. Phil Anderson, and look at this time. This is going to be the best time because Anderson's bringing just 5 men to the line here, just the required number. They shed all the rest, but the 5 TVM boys, I think, well inside 55 minutes and counting. They're going to set the best time. There it is, 55:06. So Phil Anderson takes the overall lead, or rather his TVM team does. And that is going to help him enormously back up towards the top of the leaderboard. With Pedro Delgado, Perico, as he's called in Segovia. He's suffering.
Looks like he's suffering a little bit here, Phil. He did attack this morning on the stage towards the end to try and jump away from the end, but it looks as if he's suffering quite a lot here as he sat on the back of this group. It's amazing the Tour de France produces these stories all the time where you think it's a foregone conclusion. Look, Delgado's coming off the back of the group here a little bit just as I'm talking. The team look back to see where he is and they sit up and they'll wait for him.
That's when they get the message, because this is quite amazing. Delgado, quite apparently, is in all sorts of trouble here. The back rider there, look, he's tapping the other rider, and they're waiting for Delgado to pull him back into the race. That's Julian Gorospe, and he's indicating to Delgado to move across and get tucked in nice and neat behind him. But Delgado is not taking that wheel cleanly at all. He is in big trouble here. The defending champion of the Tour de France. These are going to be the most forgettable opening 2 days of his whole professional cycling career. Gorospe looking over his shoulder and finding, even though he's slowing the rhythm, Delgado is slowing as well. And they're going over what is actually a slight rise. Now he'll roll back on. Meanwhile, the head of the group gets on with the pacemaking. But Delgado showing signs of being in all sorts of trouble. And I must say I find that quite surprising, Paul, because I really thought this morning he was looking sharp again.
Well, I just don't know what to say, because it reminds me, looking at him here now, it reminds me of Laurent Fignon a couple of years ago when his team had to wait for him in a team time trial and he couldn't follow the wheel. It's really strange, and you can see as the riders, the Reynolds team here now, they're all bunching up. They're having to slow down to wait for Delgado, who is supposed to be the leader of this formation. There he is, suffering on the back there.
Well, he's the first rider to wear number 1 by right in the Tour de France for 3 years, because it means he won the race a year ago. And, of course, when Greg LeMond and Stephen Roach won the race, they didn't do it. Now, look at this. Delgado's blown up. His legs have gone. The team have also gone at the moment. Now the heads are turning. This is an amazing story, and it's ongoing for Pedro Delgado, the center of the doping controversy a year ago. And now he's here. He arrives late for the start in the prologue. He makes a 2-minute 42-second late start. He finishes last of the lot. He's last in the Tour de France at the start of the day, and he is now in all sorts of trouble in the team time trial with the team of which he is the captain. But once you get into this situation, Paul, you're not allowed to get that second win. You can't get the chance to recover.
Especially in a team time trial, there's no way you get you don't get your win back. You don't recuperate. It really is. He's going to be in a state of agony all the way to the finish now. And look at the disarray in the team there as they wait. He is their number 1 man. He's got number 1 on his jersey, and they've just got to wait for him. They've done a fantastic ride for the Reynolds team up to now in this team time trial, and here we've got them sitting up and waiting for them. We're going to have to nurse him to the finish. I really don't know what this announces for Pedro Delgado for the next few days.
Well, Panasonic at kilometre 24, the team that used to rule the roost when they were the rally team, still the same manager in Peter Post in team time trials. They were never beaten for years, and now they're coming back again. The top at 24 kilometres, having knocked the ADR back into second place. Peugeot boys. The boys in blue. Robert Miller back with the team with which he started his professional career back in 1980. They wore white jerseys with black checkers on them in those days. They were just simply Peugeot. Now the Z Peugeot, new sponsor, more money, these professional teams at this level of competition are now costing in the region of over £2 million a season to run competitively at the top level. TVM holding on to that #1 slot. Here comes the CRE team. This will be an interesting time now because they want to be faster than Histor. Histor have done 55.56. That's Lilho's team, second overall. 55.31. It'll be close, but it should be good enough for Carrera. And then all that will remain is that nobody else gets within 4 minutes of them, and that means that Da Silva, great cheer here for Da Silva, you can probably hear it, but they've taken second position, 55.43, and that, I think, will keep Acacio Da Silva in yellow to say goodbye to his adopted town of Luxembourg tomorrow. Well, this is the Z Peugeot team. Our screen says Reynolds, but in fact the Z Peugeot team has passed the Reynolds, and the Reynolds team at Delgado are behind them, which means the Peugeots have taken 3 minutes out of Delgado here, and that's good news for Eric Bowyer today. 55.03, the best time as well. Delgado has now lost another 3 minutes here to Eric Bowyer, who finished 5th in the Tour de France last year. This is an amazing Tour de France now. Reynolds team come in 58.18. Delgado's Tour has to be in doubt now. Delgado at the head of this group of riders as he comes in. No, he's not. Delgado here at the back of the group of riders as they cross the line, wearing #1. A disastrous day, a disastrous weekend for Pedro Delgado. He may well have lost this Tour de France in 2 very simple days. For the ADR team coming up to the line, and a good time by Greg LeMond's boys. They're going to pip the Z Peugeots for first place. Greg LeMond's team are going to go top of the leaderboard here. He really is putting in his challenge this year for the Tour de France. Look at the time, 54 minutes and 39 seconds for Greg LeMond's ADR squad. But now we go to the finish. This one will be interesting. The arrival of Charlie Motte. He's driving the team to the line himself with Eric Canitou. And a little bit of help for the one on the right. It's the 5th man the clock stops on. They're going to be outside the ADR time, but they're also going to be very, very close to 2nd or 3rd position here. And as the RMO boys hit the line with Charlie Motte, the key man, they get 2nd place. 55 minutes and 2 seconds for Motte's team, and you won't get much better than that. He stays well in the picture with that ride. This is the finish now, is the arrival of Panasonic, and they look to me as though they're going to take ADR off the top of the list. The big return then of the Flying Dutchman Peter Post, who manages this team. He's now got himself a nice unit working together because they're going to cross the line in first place. A nice cheer from the crowd. Yes, 54 minutes, 20 seconds for the Panasonic boys, but they will know shortly when the manager tells them they were not the best time at the 24 kilometres point, and so they'll have to see whether they've come over the second half of this course better than the System U boys. This is the 7-11 team. They'll be the next team to finish on the outskirts of Luxembourg now. 54 minutes, 20 seconds. A tremendous ride for the 28.5, rather hilly miles here by the Panasonic squad. Remarkable performance. Before the race started, everybody thought it would take certainly 1 hour to cover the course, and no team's been slower than Delgado's team. I have to say that, 58 minutes he did, and currently lying last of all the riders who finished. 17, here they are. Andy Hampton's squad and Sean Yates bringing the team home, using those immense legs as he drives the group through towards the finish. The big man that the team call the animal, when they want to go fast, they send Sean to the front, and he's bringing them home nicely now. A great time. It's not going to be the best, but it's costing them really no time at all. Just 24 seconds slower than Panasonic. They'll be happy enough with that tonight. lifting hero of this team undoubtedly is Gert Jan Turnisse, number 18, because he crashed when he hit a metal barrier in the Tour of Switzerland, and he's riding this race, in fact, with his ribs still broken. This is the penultimate team to come in. The Super U's should be the only team that will challenge Panasonic, but we'll see what PDM have done over this last half and see if they pull back. Number 13 there, Rudy Garlands, leading the line at the moment. And Turnisse doing more than his share of the work, Paul. That's rather good, really, because the man with the broken ribs is now in the lead.
Well, he's a strong boy and he's got a good mentality, and I think if he can get through the first 3 or 4 days of this tour, he's got his own physiotherapist with him to look after him for these first 3 or 4 days. You could see him coming back into form later on in this stage race.
I would agree with that. And this crowd is getting bigger now as we head up towards the Avenue de la Liberté. First the back view of the team, now the front view, and here they are. Stephen Rooks is bringing the team home, the winner of the King of the Mountains a year ago, the first Dutchman ever to win that title. They're already outside, though, of Panasonic. And so Panasonic only have to worry about the Super U's now with Laurent Fignon, and what a result it would be if Fignon can pull that off for the team. 54.38 PDM, third place for them. They're just 1 second slower than the Super Convex team. And here are the last team on the road, the Super U's, led by Laurent Fignon. Fignon, the only man in the Tour, in the team here, who could win the Tour de France. And what a good job he's making of it so far. Fresh from his victory in the Tour of Italy, Laurent Fignon is now looking for a solid Tour de France for a change. The press at the moment have got a lot of nice things to say about Laurent Fignon. They've even forgiven him for throwing a bottle at them last year during the race when he was getting a little bit fed up with the close attention, because everybody knew sooner or later he was going to abandon the Tour, so they stayed with him until he did. And this year he's a different man. He's actually a very nice character indeed to talk to. Fignon wears 41. And we're not seeing him at the back. I guess he's driving this group at the front. Well, there's the time with 1 kilometre to go. Inside 2 minutes, Paul. Is it possible?
It's very possible, Phil. It's going to be touch and go on the line, but with only 1 kilometre to go at the speed they're doing, they should do it in about 1 minute 10. I would think on the line, without any doubt, they've got a very good chance of getting inside the Panasonic time. There we go. They've got still more than a minute to go, so I think we're going to see Super U producing their first victory of this year's Tour de France.
And further confirmation that Laurent Fignon is coming back to be a power in the Tour de France, as he was when he won this race in 1983 and 1984. But there's plenty of good news for Carrera as well, because this time will not be anywhere like good enough to take the yellow jersey away from Acacio da Silva today. So the man who won this morning will stay in yellow. But the team comes home, and look at this. They've gone faster and faster as this race has progressed. And Fignon now is coming home with Christophe Leven on the right in 53.47.48. The best time and the last team to finish. That's the way to end the stage of the Tour de France. Laurent Fignon is back. The French are going to love him all the more for it. And with a time like that, he surely is going to go from strength to strength now. And so Acacio da Silva of Portugal has well survived the team time trial section. And I bet he's a little bit surprised today when he pulls on that yellow jersey. The breakaway this morning, a fine adventure worked out, and he didn't have to do a great deal this afternoon to defend the lead he built up today. So he leaves Luxemburg, and his family live here as race leader of the Tour de France.
So Da Silva in yellow then, but there's the outcome of the team time trial. A good disciplined performance by that Super U outfit. Second were Panasonic, and third the Super Convex. The overall classification, Da Silva, Lilholt, Fignon, Marie and Simon now